What's the creepiest thing you've come across on Reddit? A few years ago, someone in r/gaming doxed me and made a subreddit about me that included pictures of me from when I was a kid, where I lived, various social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, etc., and some other stuff. The admins removed it and banned the person who made it within an hour or two of when I reported it, but it was still up for about 12 hours for anyone to see. That guy who crawled into a tiny tunnel in a cave and died upside down when he got stuck. So disturbing to imagine knowing that your last day on Earth was spent upside down, nearly losing consciousness with you and your very upset family contemplating how bad you fucked up. Haunted me for days. Carl teaches programming. Redditor dedicates a huge amount of time creating and maintaining a subreddit to teach people programming. He's articulate, super nice, positive. Only he wasn't. He was a piece of shit who was raping his kid with his partner on the regular. He killed himself in prison. I hope his kid is doing okay. The guy who had a dream of black and white people and woke up screaming on his bathroom floor. Then he theorized someone broke into his house and drugged him. That was a mad ride. Somebody came posting to legal advice, claiming that she had been raped and wanted to know what to do from there. Except they hadn't bothered making an alt account, so posters there quickly sussed out from their post history that he was an incel, and he was actually looking for advice on how to get away with it. That and another post where one of them fantasized about maiming his roommate were the final straws for Reddit to finally ban their original sub. Probs this guy who got a cell phone snuck in at a mental health ward who was trying to convince people that he was given milk from the future or some shit, like he posted links to blurry pictures he sneakily took in their mess hall with the date of the milk, as if it was super insane stuff, when it was an average expiration date. Felt super bad for them cause they felt like the government was controlling their mind or some shit. The pics posted by a hiker/climber about a day trip out with their buddies. Seems clean enough, yeah? They found a severely injured, nearly dead woman near the trail on their way out. Turned out she'd been there for a day or two already and her hiking partner passed away trying to find help. It wasn't until the op hiker got home that they noticed the girl they rescued was visible in the background of some of their pics. Found an account that had been posting pictures of underage girls ripped off of Instagram. Every single girl he posted was in my high school. I posted this in another thread recently, but it's definitely by far one of the creepiest thing I've come across. I'm a mod here, so I have to deal with cleaning up a lot of the bad posts, but one stands out in my memory. This was back when we allowed the text box, so the bot didn't remove posts using it right away and someone posted something like, "Isn't this so hot?" and they linked a video in the text box. It was child porn. Hated that I clicked the link, but at least I was able to remove it and send it up to the admins to take action. Pretty not safe for work, so fair warning. Back when Watch People Die was still online, someone posted a video of a guy who'd attempted to kill himself with a shotgun to the head. And failed. Let's just say that video is still burned into my brain. That one post on r/confessions of the guy that killed his grandma for making his illegitimate half-sister burn herself to death. I'll try to find it, hang on. "10 years ago I murdered my grandmother and I have been celebrating it with my family. Never been good at writing essays, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. I'm now the only child from my parents, but this wasn't always the case. My dad is a spineless cuck that is dominated by my ruthless mother. When I was around 2 years old and living in Sweden, my dad went on a trip to Syria to visit my grandmother that used to live there, the one I murdered, and stayed with her for 1 year because she had a tumor and had to get a few operations. During this year he was a regular to a prostitute he fancied. Eventually he got her pregnant. After giving birth she came to my grandmother's house and just dumped her daughter on him and left. She ghosted him and he could not find her anymore. My mother called my mother and all hell broke loose. My mother ordered him to throw my sister in the dumpster and pretend she was not alive because she was filth. My dad was very close to doing this, but somehow what's left of his fatherly had woke up for a second and he didn't throw my sister away. He instead convinced my grandmother to keep her and eventually she will take care of her when she grew up, technically just having her as a servant. This was the most humane solution he could come up with. When I eventually grew up I met my sister when I was visiting my mother and we got really close. She even looked a lot like me, so I had no doubt she was my sister. But the way she was living was just awful. It broke my heart seeing how underfed she was. Her clothes were one rip away from being rags, and she was not allowed to use my mother's combs and stuff to fix her hair. I would collect any money I got and send it her way, but my mother eventually found out and started taking them for herself. She was never allowed to go to school and could only see a doctor when she became seriously ill. By the time she reached 14 years old she admitted to me that she was thinking about killing herself because she could not see any future for herself. My dad would just marry her to some shit family as soon as my mother died and she would be more like a commodity to be traded. On 13th of June 2008 my sister had a fight with my grandmother and was holding a little can of gasoline and saying that she was going to burn herself. My mother laughed and dared her to do it, which my sister did. My sister lived and died miserably. At first my parents told me that it was an accident, but I overheard them talking about what happened in detail. By this point my dad did not even care. I was very disgusted with him and my mother. I dreamed a lot about just jumping on them and biting their fucking throats off and just watch them bleed in horror as I kick their faces in. I wanted to hold his jaw from the inside with my hands and just rip it from his face. I eventually brooded and started going over the events. 3 guilty people, and I was planning on killing them all as violently as possible. I could never come up with a plan regarding my parents, but I was already done with how to end my mother, the filth who made life miserable for my sister. On December 2008 I booked a ticket to visit my mother and was supposed to return before New Year to celebrate with my friends. I told my parents that my friend is picking me up from the airport and I'm gonna stay with him for a few days before coming back. I then called my friend and told him that I'm going to bang a girl that I met, and if my parents ever ask him about me, he would have to cover for me. Him being oblivious to what I was actually doing agreed. I flew to Syria, stayed with my mother for about 2 weeks, and when the day of my flight came I packed my bags and told her that I'm going to the airport. With disgust I kissed her goodbye and then made as much noise as possible with my bags to make sure that the nosy neighbor saw me leave for the airport. I even called a taxi driver that lived nearby and he took me directly to the airport. I made sure he saw me get into the airport. I then stood at the check-in and took a selfie. I didn't check in. I turned around and walked out. I took a cab to a nearby hotel and dropped my bag off in the room. I changed my clothes and then took a cab back to my mother's apartment. It was 2 at night and I was very quiet when I got up the stairs. I knocked on her door and she opened when she saw me through the hole. She was surprised to see me and was wondering about the flight. I told her it was delayed for a few hours, so I left the bags at the check-in with the employees. She was tired, so she decided to us some tea while I waited. As soon as she got up I stood in front of her. She had this very confused look on her face due to my sudden reaction. I had not planned how to exactly do it, but I knew this is as good as it gets. Really quickly I held her neck with my hands, my thumbs pressed on her throat very hard in case she tried to scream. She instantly got a horrified look on her face and I just got really angry. She tried to speak, but couldn't make a single sound. At first she tried hitting me, but my arms were longer than hers, and she could not reach me. When I started applying pressure she tried to scratch my arms instead, but I was wearing a thick sweater, and also I was being pumped with adrenaline. When I saw her strangling, I became very angry. I was grinding my teeth so hard I almost broke them. I told her this is for my sister. I kept repeating my sister's name in a quiet, angry tone, but she couldn't hear me. She was panicking, and her only concern was getting air. She then kind of just froze there. I kept squeezing, even though she didn't move. I really wanted to make sure. I finally let go after a while. My hands were cramped from all that tension, and listened for a heartbeat. I sat then on the sofa, took a few breaths, and shocked her again real hard for around 10 minutes. When I was sure she was dead, I started opening every drawer she had, until I finally found her golden money. I put them in a small bag and left. I closed the door behind me in case a neighbor found her too early. I walked for maybe a whole hour, while my hands were shaking as crazy, until I was finally far away. I threw the bag with the money and gold in a small trash bucket that people had in front of their house. I took a taxi to the hotel, and I remembered my sister and cried. I remembered my mother's face, and I calmed down. I felt complete, like when a daunting task was finally over, a very soothing relief. That night I slept like a fucking baby. I woke up the next morning and brought breakfast and booked a ticket back to Sweden the same day. I turned the TV on and put Lane some music. For the first time after my sister's death, I was happy. When I came back to Sweden, I took the bus back from the airport and later took the train to my friend's house. Told him that the girl dumped me and I was instead celebrating with him. My dad calls me 2 days later and informs me that my grandmother was robbed and that the thief stole her valuables and killed her when she saw him. No one suspected a fucking thing. I acted surprised and made my way back. For a few months I acted sad and secretly watched my family in case someone got a wild theory, but they all seemed to believe the robbery part, since it's not that uncommon. The closest someone got was my uncle, when he mentioned how unfortunate it was that I left a day before this and that I could have saved her. My mother called it lucky because I maybe would have also gotten killed. I pretended to be sad about it. Now every year my dad makes a ceremony to kind of remember my mother. They make dinner for family and friends and hope that the prayers reach her. They don't fucking know that this is a time for celebration for me. I'm now married and I have 3 kids. The plan of killing my parents is cancelled due to them fucking themselves over so bad that it's more of a punishment if they stay alive. They are also not allowed near my children as a punishment to how they treated my sister. Every year I celebrate this by buying gifts to my wife and kids. My wife wondered why I did this, and I simply said that the way my mother passed made me realize